Hey, Victimology. Just wanted to touch base with you and give you a little bit of a completion of the module 2, that presentation, since we started it the other day. And I know we're going to incorporate some of the things that are local and current and in the news right now. So I need to make sure that we don't get too off track from the main information that I need to get in you. But I also, you know me, I want it to be real, reality based, and for us to be able to connect the dots to something that is true and accurate and going on in the criminal justice field. Okay? So, with that being said, we had started talking about the physical consequences of somebody becoming a victim. And I asked you what were some of the types of injuries that people, something acute, something that has happened right now, it's going to be in the short term. So, when you think about that, what are some of the short-term types of injuries that individuals could have? And yes, I'm looking at my notes every once in a while because I want to make sure that I don't go off track, squirrel. Anyway, immediate injuries. Those are the things that you're going to suffer acutely, immediately, that are going to happen. They're going to be broken bones. I think Tatiana, you mentioned that. We had other people, bruises, scars, scratches, scrapes, cuts, anything like that. That is something that you can physically see, but that you can recover from. Okay, so those are immediate injuries. And those are things that when law enforcement or somebody shows up, they're going to be able to see. Now, what I want you to do is also, if you've had race, gender, and crime, we've talked about this in that class, that people of different skin tones, it doesn't even have to be different ethnicities or whatever, but that does play a big role in it. Imagine somebody with a different color skin, they're going to bruise differently. So if the officer is not exactly trained to notice what a bruise looks like on a white individual's skin versus a person who has very dark skin, very black skin, they may not bruise at all, or their bruise may look more black. I've spoken to my friend. She does not do the whole, black, purple, green, yellow thing that I do. She just gets a big black spot and then it eventually fades away. So realize that different people, those immediate injuries will look differently on different skin tones and things like that. Okay? Big important thing to remember. Injuries that will leave, they're going to be there. Long-term effects, so long-term visible scars. When I want you to think of those, I want you to think of the fact that they're not catastrophic, I believe the PowerPoint says, meaning that they're not going to be permanently debilitating, but that they can change some of the activities that you do in life. Let's just say that broken bone happens to be a compound fracture. Well, you may never play soccer again, or you may not be able to run like you used to, or you may not be able to play tennis. So those are things that will leave visible scars on you. You may have to have, bones will have to have rods or plates or screws or whatever. You'll have those surgical scars. So you're going to see them, whereas the cuts, bruises, and things like that are going to fade and there's no long-term repercussion that other individuals can see. That's what I want you to get. It's not that there aren't long-term repercussions for the victim, but for others to see, no. So those are your immediates. Then the visible scars are things that something is going to be left behind that, like I said, it's not catastrophic to your life, but it could be to your lifestyle. Okay, so something about you is going to have to change. Unknown long-term physical injuries. And if I look at my thing here, they really only gave us one, but when we get to class tomorrow, maybe you guys can come up with some other ones. But they mentioned, let's just say somebody's sexually assaulted or and gets an STD. Okay, that is an unknown long-term physical injury because most STDs are things that once they're in your system, they stay in your system. They may not flare up. They may not flare up for 5 years and then all of a sudden it happens again. Other injuries in that same spectrum that they talk about is if somebody has gotten certain STDs, if not treated, can not only be catastrophic, but they can be fatal. So back in the 80s and things like that, there were people that would get HIV and AIDS. Okay. We didn't know anything about it back then. But there are still people who may get that disease now, and out of anger and frustration, they will sleep with as many people or get even with other people by having unprotected sex and not letting the partner know that they are HIV or AIDS positive. That is an illegal thing, but that is an unknown injury that you may have that you weren't expecting. You went out for a good time, you met somebody you wanted to be with, and then here they passed along something that's going to cause you to be a victim forever. Okay. Uh, Long-term catastrophic injuries. These are really ones that are going to restrict the victim's movements. It's not like the plates and rods and screws in your leg that still allow you to function. These are things where maybe your back was broken in the struggle and you're now confined to a wheelchair. Well, now that doesn't just prohibit your lifestyle, but it actually restricts your movement. You can't necessarily get in and out of a car on your own. You may not even be able to drive unless you can afford to get the vehicle that allows you to drive by hand and not using the foot pedals. You can't get in and out of vehicles or cars or seats, things like that, on your own. So those are long-term catastrophic effects that they really are restrictive. They change not only your lifestyle, but they restrict your movements. Um, Other ones that you can think of, and I'll have you guys give me some specifics, but I want you to think of long-term catastrophic injuries that might shorten your lifespan. Okay? That's all I'm going to give you on that one. I want you to do a little work and a little digging, but realize that, yeah, your victimization could actually shorten how long you're going to live. Okay? So, next one, physical impact. Ooh, we were talking about these the other day. We have physiological, rapid heart rate. These are immediate things. Rapid heart rate, hyperventilation, stomach distress. You guys were kind of not nice to me the other day and put me through physiological anxiety when one of you decided to be really smart and do some extensive research and came up with the one thing that freaks me out, stresses me out, and makes me nauseous immediately. Thankfully, we did not have to call janitorial because I'd have killed you guys. So, but you could see a physiological anxiety response when you guys even just mentioned the name, it started the gag reflex, okay? Physical injuries, gunshots, stab wounds. Again, we have broken bones, sprains, burns, all of that stuff. Physical injuries that lead to other health conditions, physical injuries that can lead to other health conditions. Heart attacks, strokes. If you go and you victimize an older individual or somebody who has a heart condition, somebody that might already be predisposed to some kind of health risk, you can actually stress them out to the point of causing them to have seizure, strokes, heart attacks, and many other things. They also talk about if you're pushing somebody, how that they consider this a physical injury that leads to other conditions. If that pushing you and shoving you down the stairs breaks your leg, your arm, your neck, whatever, they consider that in this category as well. Increased risk of cardiac distress, irritable bowel syndrome. There are probably somebody in this classroom that when you get stressed, that it messes with your digestive, your intestinal system. So some people get really nervous and they have to go to the bathroom. Okay, that does affect your lifestyle. And you're like, how far away can you go to be away from a bathroom? Do you get social anxiety that stresses you out when you're in places you don't know or around people you don't know? And so therefore that stress manifests itself in not being able to control some of your bodily functions. You got to go, you got to go. Permanent disability, we already talked about that, putting you in a wheelchair. Disfigurement, we talked about that in class, where one of the things that men and women are likely to do in certain situations, and we'll discuss that again. I want you to bring them up. That acid throwing, okay? It's a disfigurement. It's an intentional disfigurement. So most of the time when somebody becomes a victim, the perpetrator is not necessarily intending to victimize them or isn't considering what they're doing to be a victimization of the person. But imagine the kind of person it has to take. When you throw acid in somebody's face for the or I've seen girls, I've seen lots of videos, lots of jail interviews, girls that'll take razor blades to other girls' faces and things like that. That is intentional. Those are different kinds of people that will commit those crimes because the crime itself, the intent is to disfigure. It's not, I'm trying to rip off your handbag and oops, I accidentally spilled acid on you. No, the disfigurement is not only the crime, but it's also the result of the crime, and it's a long-term victimized issue that that person is going to have to deal with forever. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many plastic surgeries you have, you cannot repair the damage that's been done. And then again, we talked about lifestyle changes, and that doesn't necessarily affect just the primary victim. Think about it. If somebody is now in a wheelchair, who are the secondary victims and how are they affected? I'll leave it at that because I want to go into that a little bit because it also then goes into tertiary victims, which I'll say, let's just say it could be your employer. So tertiary victim could be employer that you're now in a wheelchair. You tell me how your employer is victimized and why. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Let's see. Physical impacts, lethargy and body fatigue, sleep disorders. You could either be really tired, sleep too much, or you can't sleep at all. So sometimes you're afraid to close your eyes because the images come back. Other times you don't want to crawl out of bed. So that might be a depressive disorder or something like that. You could, some people when they get stressed do not want to eat. Nothing, not at all. Don't bring it near them. They're going to gag. They don't want it. Other people binge eat. If it's not nailed down, they're stressing. It's a stress reaction. So what they're going to do is they're going to eat everything they can get their hands on. Some of that also isn't just stress. A lot of people who gain weight and a significantly large amount of weight, especially after they've been the victim of some sort of crime, let's say women and rape or whatever, they will put on, some of them mentally will think, if I'm really heavy, then I'll no longer be attractive. So therefore, nobody will want to sexually assault me again. It's a psychological issue. It's honestly, it's not true because rape and sexual assault are not about sex and gratification in that situation. It's about power. So you could be underweight, you could be a Barbie, you could be athletic, you could be way overweight, and it doesn't matter. Anybody can be a victim of a person who needs to show dominance for whatever reason it is that they're feeling the lack of. Okay. Same thing. Somebody goes through and they are a victim of sexual assault. 9 times out of 10, decrease in libido and interest in any kind of sexual activity. For men, women, we just maybe don't want to do it at all. We have no interest. It's very uncomfortable mentally, physically, emotionally. Sex is a mental, physical, and emotional thing for us to be involved in it, much more than, not saying that it's not for men, but there definitely needs to be that component for women to be interested in sexual activity. So if a man is victimized, may not be a decrease in libido, but his mental state may change so that he can't even function. So he may have, a sexual dysfunction so that even if he wanted it, he can't get past that mental block and he just can't perform. Okay. So then that rolls over to more victimization, because then he feels inadequate. He's beating himself up. There comes depression. There comes anxiety when you're with your partner, and, oh, am I going to be able to do this or not? And then you also put yourself through, is my partner going to stay with me? And that's a 50-50. We've talked about that in class. And some people can handle, the partner can handle it for a period of time, and some can be amazing and last for forever. And then there are others that turn around and say, enough. It's been 6 months. I can't do it anymore. So realize that it affects both men and women, but it affects them in different ways. I already talked about not being able to work, your fear, increased risk. Once you've been a victim, your risk level goes up for being victimized again. Okay. Some of this is redundant. Psychological consequences. You go into crisis, which is a temporary circumstance that upsets you and your equilibrium. It means right at that moment, you mentally can't get it together and you don't know what to do. You're in shock, you're in disbelief, you'll go through anger. All of those things will go through. Everybody has a different way of coping. Okay. So criminal victimization is a crisis. Okay, it is a crisis for somebody to go to. I don't care how small the criminal act was. Each person reacts differently. And if you've grown up in a small town and you've never seen or heard of crime, you can't imagine anything bad happening. You're out till all hours of the day and night. You're running through fields. You don't have like farm. Like I grew up on 1,100 acres. Okay, so getting up at the crack of dawn and just taking off without saying anything to my aunt and uncle, absolutely. I might be fishing at this pond in the front yard, which might be a mile from the house. I might be in the one that's right outside the back door, or I could be the one that's probably, I'm going to guess in this day and age, 5 miles away, but it was still on the property. So we can't do that now. So growing up like that and then moving to different areas where one of the jobs that I had was in a very urban downtown high-rise place, and one of the crimes that was going on was that people were actually taking the homeless individuals, it was winter, taking them off the street, and one day they actually put them in they put one gentleman in the dumpster behind my building. My office was the last one before the break room and then the door to go outside, and they lit him on fire. Okay. So growing up, running through the fields, doing all of that, to then shifting to where I wasn't the primary victim, most definitely a secondary victim, couldn't even imagine what was going through somebody's head that was okay, let alone what that smell is. Something you'll never get it out of your head. It's always there. Okay. So that would be a long-term consequence in my situation, that burning. And you guys know, I don't care if you girls, you've curled your hair and you've accidentally hit your face. That burning hair or burning flesh smell is unlike anything else, and it doesn't go away. You'll always recognize. You smell a dead body, you're going to always be able to know that's a dead body. Okay. Let's see. This video is getting kind of long, which means it's going to be a pain to upload. This is the last thing I'm going to show you, and this is where we'll start in class tomorrow. The stages of response. You have the impact stage, which is disbelief, helplessness, and mood swings. Then the recoil stage. We have anger, guilt, fear, sadness, denial, emotional detachment, and why me? Why? What did I do to deserve this? All right. These are very important for us to really discuss, because everybody's different and how quickly they move through them is very different. And then the last one is your reorganizational stage. And this is where you learn to come to terms with it. how are you going to cope with the event that happened, and how do you move on from it? I don't ever want to say that there's closure. I don't ever want to say that you'll get over it, but how do we learn to live with it, put it in the past, and live to the best of our ability and maintain a lifestyle that's comfortable for us as well as our immediate friends and family. All right, guys, that's it for me for tonight. I'm going to upload this for you so you'll have it for tomorrow. But if you get a chance to listen to it, realize we're going to start at stages of response in the module presentation tomorrow. Enjoy your Sunday night. Hope you're not waiting till 11:59 to get those assignments in. And if you are, good luck. See you tomorrow.